Sarah's hands trembled as she cleaned out her locker for the last time. 15 years of dedication, countless double shifts, patients who called her their angel, and it all ended with a single meeting. Budget cuts, they said. Last hired, first fired, they explained, though Sarah knew she'd been there longer than half the staff. The truth was simpler and crueler. She'd reported medication discrepancies, questioned a doctor's judgment that nearly killed a patient, and made enemies of people who valued silence over safety. The cardboard box felt impossibly heavy as she walked through the hospital corridors one final time. Nurses she'd mentored avoided eye contact. Doctors she'd saved from fatal mistakes studied their charts. Only Maria from housekeeping squeezed her shoulder and whispered, "You're the best one here," Sarah managed to smile, though tears blurred her vision as she pushed through the emergency room exit. The parking lot stretched before her, but her car wasn't there. She'd forgotten, in the chaos of the morning's termination, that it was in the shop. The walk home would take 2 hours through neighborhoods that grew rougher with each mile. She adjusted the box in her arms and started walking, her sensible work shoes already pinching after just 10 minutes. 40 minutes into her journey, Sarah heard the sirens. A massive pileup on the highway overpass sent debris raining onto the street below. Cars crumpled like accordions. People stumbled from vehicles, dazed and bleeding. Without thinking, Sarah dropped her box and ran toward the chaos. A young mother cradled a child whose arm bent at an unnatural angle. An elderly man sat on the curb, his face gray, clutching his chest. A teenager trapped in a sedan screamed as smoke began rising from the engine. Sarah's training took over. She assessed the elderly man first, recognizing the signs of a heart attack. Using her scarf as a pillow, she positioned him properly, checked his pulse, and shouted for someone to call emergency services. She moved to the teenager next, talking calmly while assessing whether moving him would cause more damage. The smoke was thickening. She made the call, carefully extracting him through the passenger side just as flames erupted from under the hood. She worked methodically through the injured, applying pressure to wounds with torn pieces of her own jacket, stabilizing a woman's neck injury with cardboard from a nearby box, instructing bystanders on how to help. She delivered instructions with the same calm authority she'd used in the 1,000 hospital emergencies, turning frightened witnesses into an effective triage team. The sound of helicopter blades cut through the air. One helicopter landed, then another. Paramedics and emergency physicians poured out, taking in the organized scene with surprise. The victims were sorted by severity, the most critical receiving care, the wounded being comforted. Someone had stopped traffic. Someone else had organized a supply line of first aid materials from nearby cars. Who set up this triage? A flight physician demanded, looking around the scene with approval. "Where's the nurse?" "We were told a nurse was running the show." Sarah stood up from where she'd been monitoring the elderly man's vital signs, her clothes torn and bloodied, her hair falling from its bun. "I'm a nurse," she said quietly. "Or I was until this morning." The physician stared at her. "You did all this?" "Alone?" "Not alone," Sarah gestured to the people helping. They just needed direction. As the victims were loaded into helicopters and ambulances, the physician approached Sarah again. His name tag read Dr. Michael Chun, Flight Medicine Director. "You saved at least 4 lives here today. That teenager would have burned. The cardiac patient would have died. The woman with the spinal injury would have been paralyzed if someone had moved her wrong." He paused. "You said you were a nurse until this morning?" Sarah explained briefly, too exhausted for bitterness. Dr. Chun listened, his expression darkening. Then he pulled out his phone, making a call while never breaking eye contact with her. "Director Rodriguez?" "Mike Chen. I'm at the highway pileup, and I just watched the finest emergency response I've seen in 20 years. He smiled at Sarah. "I'm standing with the nurse who coordinated it. She's looking for work, and I'm looking for someone to head our new community emergency response training program. I think we should talk." 3 months later, Sarah stood in front of a classroom of nurses, paramedics, and volunteers, teaching them the skills that had once gotten her fired: speaking up, questioning authority when lives hung in balance, and never choosing politics over patients. Her program was expanding to 3 more cities. The teenager she'd pulled from the car sent her letters from college. The cardiac patient brought her cookies every Tuesday. Sometimes fate doesn't give you what you want. Sometimes it strips everything away, walks you through fire, and hands you something better than you'd ever imagined. Sarah had lost a job, but on that long walk home, surrounded by chaos and calling, she'd found her purpose. And that made all the difference.